Hey guys, what is up? Aoki here, bringing you another tier list for the upcoming patch 11.17. It's dropping today at the time of recording, and we have got a lot of juicy changes. So I'm not going to waste you guys too much of your time with the intro. Basically, if you're new to the channel and you don't know who I am, my name is Aoki. I am a multi-season Grandmaster support player. I've got tons of experience in high elo solo queue and also in competitive for tournaments like Twitch Rivals, Clash, the Riot Grand Prix, all of which I won, by the way. But let's go ahead and get into the tier list, guys. So at the very bottom, the higher you go up the tier list, the more recommended they are to climb, especially if you're just like going to be grinding 1 or 2 or 3 champions in solo queue. So way down at the bottom, guys, you've got the tier 5. Now, this part of the list doesn't really change that much between patches, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I think these champions are absolute trash. A lot of people make a very strong case for Gragas. I see it in competitive sometimes. I never see it succeed in solo queue. So, you know, if this is purely a solo queue player watching this tier list, I really want to be playing Gragas. I think he's got some really cool disengage and playmaking ability, and I think he is pretty good against some of the higher echelon champions like Leona. Like, for instance, if Leona tries to lead, Zenith Blade in, Gragas has a really easy time keeping her from doing that by just body slamming into her. So he's really good at disrupting good champions, but I wouldn't consider him a good champion himself. He does a decently high amount of damage even when he builds tank, but you're going to be building him tank in the support position. You're going to be going Aftershock, and at that point, I really just think that you should be playing some of the good tank Aftershock champions. So not a very high opinion of Gragas. Anivia is one of those champions that, like, really good Anivia players can make Anivia support work, but it's so much effort and it's so much like learning the champion, mastering the champion, that it's almost just not worth it. Nunu is one of those champions that people really wanted to be a support when he came out, and I still see people trying to make him work as a support. Sorry, them as a support. And it's just not worth it. Whenever you W in, it's very, very projected. It's going to mess up your wave because you W straight through it. The only way that you can really make it work is like perma roaming, and at that point, like, you should just be playing one of the good roaming champions. I don't like Nunu. He does bring a little bit of like utility and stuff like that, but not enough to consider him a good support. Annie, once again, Annie used to be like a god tier champion. She was like one of the original. It was like Annie and Lux as like the greedy champions. You know, you lock them in when you just like want to 1v9 and blow people up. But they've so since then like made so many changes towards just like balancing her around mid lane. I don't think she's at all playable in bot lane, despite the fact that she does have a really high auto attack range. So like level 1, level 2, level 3, like you can actually get some good harass in. And then of course you have kill potential at level 6. So if you just want a player like that and play her as like a kill cheese champion, it can work, but it's not very good. Same with Fiddlesticks. Fiddlesticks, ever since they've reworked him, is just not really remotely playable in the bot lane. What you're pretty much doing is just poking with the very low range poke ability on your E, and it's targeted, and you have to hit the very center of it. It's just not tuned around like actually laning with it. It's tuned around clearing monsters with it and comboing with your ultimate. Which, speaking of your ultimate, you can get cheese kills just like with Annie in lane playing Fiddlestick support. But you're going to have to wait to level 6, and if you're playing against like relatively decent players like Platinum Plus, they're going to know what you're going for when you walk into the bush post level 6. So I don't recommend Fiddlestick support. Amumu support, he did actually get a rework on this patch. Now he can actually use his Q more often, but they did some balancing changes. I think they made him a little less tanky, and he was already like a very, very risky champion to lock in the support position. So I don't think this like new rework where he can use 2 Qs in a row within 3 seconds is going to make him any better of a support. That being said, if you are going to play him as support, he's really fun to play as support. Play him full AP. Just go for like, you know, big full AP one shots with like Hextech Protobelt, things like that. He has a surprisingly high amount of damage, but not very good. Malzahar, once again, same class as like Fiddlesticks and Annie. If you can survive to level 6 and flash ult someone, maybe you'll get a kill. Ivern, this one really frustrates me and upsets me because I wish Ivern was playable as a support, but what he ends up being is just like a very clunky, awkward, like sort of counter jungle dependent champion, and you can't really counter jungle as support. So he just ends up being like a bad version of Janna with his shield. So on to the tier 4. Now these champions are not quite as bad in my opinion as the tier 5, but you will be hurting your climb if you're playing these. Now we're starting to get into the more for fun area. These champions can work. I know players who play solely Shaco support, right? I know players who play solely Nico support, and they make them work. But it's kind of like the same case of Anivia, is it's how much effort are you willing to put into mastering an off-meta champion, right? So Shaco support He's very dependent on people misplaying and like miscalculating like what Shaco can actually do to them. So I don't think that it's a very good idea to just like spam Shaco support, because he's dependent on the other team misplaying, and sometimes people are just going to play super safe and outscale you, and it's going to be very sad. Poppy is kind of relegated into like being a really good counter pick to I use Leona a lot when I'm talking about like counter picks and disengages and stuff like that, because I think Leona's like the shining star, right? Like she's the star student of hard engage, especially in solo queue. So I'll use her to talk about like why Grog is good or bad, or in comparison. So like if they have a Leona, you can lock in a Poppy. So like let's say they have a Leona and your team still needs a tank, and your last pick for support, and you can pick Poppy there. Um, she's decent in that very niche scenario. I want to be first picking Poppy in any scenario. Yeah, she's pretty decent counter pick and not super great first pick. Scion. Scion has come and go in the meta of support. You can still play him in like these really weird off meta style builds where it's like Suicide Scion or like Comet Poke Scion, and Lethality Scion with Prowler's Claw, and he Prowler's Claws through his once he dies with his passive. It's really weird. It's not stable at all, and it's not very good. Nico, I think she's just a shorter range version of Lux. Like I mentioned earlier, there are good Nico support players out there, but it takes a lot of effort, and you have to I think you have to like really enjoy playing the champion to go out of your way to play Nico support. J4, as I always mention in these tier lists, I don't think J4 is top tier by any means, but he is super, super fun. This one gets the Aoki stamp of approval in terms of like if you're trying to enjoy yourself and you want a new off-meta champion, try out full AP J4. You go Airy. Every time you drop your E, you're dropping Airy. It does so much AP damage. You can like shield and heal your team if you go Shurelius or Moonstone. It's so much fun. But I can't wholeheartedly recommend it as an actual good build. Camille, I think Camille's time as a support has passed there. Like there's like 2 or 3 seasons ago when Camille's support was being played in the LCS. But I think those time, it's just like Annie. They looked at that and they said, that's not super healthy. So she's obviously tuned towards being a top laner, taking extended trades, getting her true damage off, and much less towards like CCing people. Talia, outside of like very fringe kill lanes like Pantheon Talia or like Leona Talia or like really weird stuff like that, I don't think Talia's support is very good at all. Rammus, I had such high hopes for Rammus when they reworked him. I really thought that, oh, this is going to be the upgrade to his kit that he needs to really succeed as a support, but it's just not there, guys. Ahri, I did move Ahri up from tier 5 to tier 4 this patch just because I've had a little bit more experience with Ahri, and I see the potential there, and I've also encountered a couple of high elo Ahri support players, so I see the potential there. Still don't think she's very good, but she's in the same bracket as like Nico. If you really, really love Ahri, you can absolutely make Ahri support work. All right, so getting into the bulk of the list, guys. This is tier 3. Now, these are like what I consider like average picks that can be maybe elevated above average in certain scenarios. These champions are average and should only be played if you are skilled with them or used as counter picks. I say they should only be played, but like there's a lot of people that play these champions. I think that they shine in counter picks, and if you're skilled with them. So up first, we've got Janna. I think Janna is probably the weakest enchanter this season. I think she's just being kind of left behind. Like, Janna was the original, like, brainless e-girl champion, and I hate using that term, but you guys know what I mean when I say that, right? Like, she was just known as, like, the lock her in and you get free elo, right? You just turn your brain off and play her. She is not that anymore. The game has evolved so past, like, just her being locked in for, like, pure efficiency and, like, always being useful. I think that Janna's very specific role that she plays in this game is she's the best disengage enchanter, and that's so niche of a role, and it's also difficult to do. Like, Janna is not a brainless champion. She unironically has a very, very high skill ceiling, but you have to be able to... She's the worst shielder in the game, right? She's the worst healer in the game, right? She doesn't have the most CC. Like, to CC someone, you have to charge up your Q, predict where they're going, and you have to land it as a skill shot, which can be flashed over. Like, it's hard to do what she does. What she does, what she really excels at, where the other enchanters can't do, is she's really good at disrupting plays, like a dive or, coordinated team attacking one target. You get a big, high impact ultimate and push people away. That's her niche. But the problem is that, like, those other stats and those other attributes of an enchanter that I talked about are more useful in more scenarios, right? Like if you can choose having like a very difficult to pilot disruptor champion or a Lulu where you just press E and you get a 400 HP shield on top of all these other item attributes, you're going to go for the Lulu, right? So unfortunately, I just don't think Jan is very good this season. Ashe support. I'm sure you guys, if you watch this channel, you've seen my love for Ashe support in the mini videos that I've done. I love her. I really wish that they would just rework her as an entire support. She brings a very high amount of utility, slows, hard engage, poke. The biggest issue with playing Ashe support is that you're putting 2 marksmen into the bot lane, which is always a big red flag that says, hey, jungler, come gank me, come get fed. So for that, it's a pretty big weakness. Morgana. Morgana is the star child of, she's the star athlete of counterpicks, guys. Once again, I'm going to use Leona. If the enemy team locks in Leona or Blitzcrank or Thresh, you lock in Morgana, you've ruined their day. The problem is, and the reason she isn't higher, even though champions like Leona and Thresh and Blitzcrank are very, very powerful in this season, is that she doesn't quite counter them as hard as she used to. She makes their life really miserable in laning phase, but that's kind of it. And laning phase is a very small portion of the game these days. So tier 3, I would say she's average. She's very, very good counter pick if you want to ruin a Leona's day, but Leona's probably still going to be pretty impactful in the game, especially because she can just roam. Vel'Koz. You guys lovingly told me that I forgot Vel'Koz last patch in my tier list, so here he is. I think he's relatively average. Wish I had more nice things to say about him, but honestly, poke champions in general, poke champions like Vel'Koz and Xerath, they just kind of seem like they're on their way out in the support position. I don't think people like playing against them, and I think Riot is balancing the game around that fact, so Vel'Koz is pretty average. Swain, good Swain players are absolutely terrifying. He's kind of like an AP Thresh, but he can also engage through minions. He plays a very, very strange role in the support position, but I like him, and hands of a good Swain, he's very scary. I also forgot Seraphine. I have no idea how I forgot Seraphine last patch, but she's here as well. I am placing her above Janna, but I'm definitely placing her below the other Seraphine, and you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Sona. We'll get more to her later, but I think she's a little bit average right now. Unfortunately, her best positions are APC and mid lane. I really wish that like they would tone Seraphine around playing support, because I think support players are the type of players that want to play Seraphine, right? We want to lock in Moonstone and Shurelya's and zoom around the map, healing and shielding and doing all these Seraphine things and landing big ultimates. I don't think mid laners even enjoy playing Seraphine, and I know ADC players don't enjoy playing Seraphine. So I really wish that Riot would take another look at this champion and balance her a little bit differently. But onto Shin. Shin is what I've always considered a higher risk, higher damage version of Leona. The problem is that when Shin goes in and misses his E, he's probably going to die, or at least like have to blow his flash or something if he misses his taunt. Whereas if Leona misses her E, yeah, you may take like a little bit of a bad trade. They may poke you out a little bit and take advantage of the fact that your E is down and you can't go in, but you're not going to die. Whereas Shin literally E's in with his face, so missing it is really, really bad. But he does an insane amount of damage. I love Shin players. If you're a Shin player out there, listen, I wanna blow you a kiss, because I love having Shin players on my team, no matter if they're playing top, support. I don't care if they're playing jungle, bro. I want Shin on my team. So just know that you're giving your team a big dopamine spike when you lock in Shin. Taric, this is kind of just a dead champion ever since funneling has been dead. I just think he's way, way, way too reactive of a champion. And I think that if you watch my coaching sessions, you know that I'm a big proponent of proactive. You want to be the first one to strike in solo queue. It gives you the biggest advantage ever because it puts the enemy team on their back foot. Whereas like Taric always feels like he's on his back foot. Yes, you can like flash stun, but other than that, there's no real proactive plays that you can do. You're always, you know, ulting to try to disrupt the enemy team. You're always reacting to what the enemy team's doing. So outside of like fringe cases like funneling, which is pretty much a dead strategy where you lock in Master Yi and Taric and they're just invincible, I don't think Taric's a very good champion. You know what? You want to know who I do think is a good champion? Teemo, guys. Teemo support. Also, he's getting buffed this patch, guys. Teemo support is getting a buff, and it's pretty juicy. Teemo support is always what I consider to be the most underrated support in the entire game. Do I think he's God tier? No. But most people think he's a 0 out of 10. Really, I would place him at like a 6 or low 7 out of 10. He's really, really great if they're against champions that have like empowered auto attacks or they've locked in the double marksman bot lane. He hits them with that blind and they can't play the game, guys. Really, give it a try, guys. Look up some of my Teemo support videos. Give it a try. Give it a chance. Go in with an open mind. Alistar, I think Alistar has had a huge fall from grace since the beginning of the season where he was, abusing Hex Flash and Phase Rush and all these things. I think they've definitely toned down that. They've hit him with a couple nerfs, and he's landing somewhere around average right now. Good Alistar players are absolutely frightening, but you have to go so far out of your way. Whereas, you're playing more straightforward champions like Blitzcrank, Thresh, Leona, you go in, right? Whereas Alistar has to, Hex Flash out of bush and, flash behind the AD carry and push him forward, and any of that can go wrong. So just play the other engage champions. Syndra, I think Syndra is in the same camp as Teemo. I think she's very underrated. I think you've got a lot of great poke pressure at level 1 just using your Q, and as long as you're not spamming your entire QWE combo in lane, that's going to run you out of mana. As long as you're not doing that, you've actually got really, really good poke in lane. Bard, impossibly high skill cap. Unfortunately, average performance in most games. Bard is also one of those champions that, no matter how good you are, sometimes you just have a really unlucky ult and you lose your team the game. So keep that in mind if you play Bard. I know a lot of people swear by the champion, and he's definitely one of the most unique champions ever created. This season, I just don't think I don't think the itemization is there for him. I don't think the meta is there for him. Zilean, I'm actually going to move Zilean up to tier 2, and we'll talk about him when we get there. We got Tom Kinch down here. Post rework, I still think he's pretty average as a support. Absolutely terrifying as a top laner. As long as you respect his level 1 cheese as support. Level 1 through 3, I would say. Yeah, he's much better in fringe cases as a support. Like when you're doing Starving Senna and just giving her a big bulky frontline so she doesn't get killed. As an actual support, I don't think his engage is super good. I don't think he's the tankiest thing on the planet. His damage is weirdly high. He's a pretty good, all-rounder. He's in tier 3. Rakan is the face of tier 3. He is the jack of all trades and master of none. He doesn't have the best engage. He doesn't have the best shielding or healing or peeling. But if you've already got a pretty well-balanced team comp and you don't need to excel in one area, Rakan's a pretty good pick. Do I recommend first picking him or spamming him in solo queue? No. But he's pretty decent. He's definitely not bad. Galio is put here because he's really great counter pick into Leona and other champions that want to hard engage. He can literally just sit in lane and spam Qs and get that little tick damage. And then once the enemy finally tries to engage, he presses W and ruins their entire day. Lux, I don't think Lux is very good at all. I would actually place her in very low tier 3. Champion is literally entirely skill shot dependent, so the higher up the ladder you go, the less efficiency you're going to get out of this champion. There's no very popular enchanter build for her right now, so you pretty much just have to lock her in as a kill champion, and it's just totally up in the air whether or not you land everything. So let's talk about Pyke. Pyke has actually just had his first pro game, and I believe it was the LEC, for a long time, Hylissang, and I watched the whole game, and I remembered why Pyke is not played most of the time at high level. The champion is just so freaking hard to pilot. He has been nerfed into oblivion. He's easily the coolest. I think he's seriously the coolest champion in the game. One of the most fun champions to pilot, but he's definitely, there's a for fun aspect to it. I have no idea how they landed with Pyke playing in the G2. I think it was the G2 versus FNC game. I don't know how Hylissang ended up playing Pyke, but if you watch that game, you'll see why. There's just so much room for error. There's so much wind-up with this character's kit. His Q has a wind-up. His E has a wind-up. Even his ultimate has a wind-up. And if anyone sidesteps that, or uses stopwatch, or Zonias, or has a GA, or flashes, or uses their mobility move, if any part of his kit misses, it crumbles. His combo is completely, you can't do it. You can't do his whole combo. So obviously you've been in a game where Pyke has popped off. We all have been, and I seriously love this champion. And I did move him up from tier 4 to tier 3 this game, or this season, or this patch. just because I have been seeing a couple people make Pike work. Do I recommend that you spam him in solo queue? No. If you have a love for the champion, can you make him work after putting hundreds of hours into him? Absolutely. And there are players that prove that. You know, players like Hanjaro and players like Davemon. Pike absolutely can work from the top, from the bottom of the ladder to the top, but this tier list is about like efficiency. It's about like you know, how much time do you need to put in? Like, how well do you know, do you need to know these characters? How good in terms of pure raw efficiency are these characters? And I can't in good conscience put Pike any higher than tier 3. um Xerath, same thing with the Vel'Koz. I just think poke supports are just really average, with the one exception being Zyra. um Braum, I don't want to talk about Braum. All right, we got tier 2. So these champions are very good on the current patch. Now we're starting to get into the best of the best. There are champions that may excel a little bit higher in some areas than these champions, but these champs are really good. I think Zilean has been sleeper OP for a couple patches now. I think that even I have been sleeping on Zilean, which is pretty crazy because I love Zilean. Zilean was like one of my favorite characters for a very long time, one of my best characters even. I think Zilean seriously absolutely cracked. At the beginning of the season, I think it was reasonable to think that he's not that good because last season Zilean heavily relied on the glacial items like the Spooky Ghost and the GLP because he was a glacial augment user. This season, glacial augment is pretty much a dead rune. There's like 2 champions that use it. And he's not using it anymore. You're either going to go Airy or you're going to go Guardian. You're going to build Shurelias. I've seen some people go like maybe not Moonstone, it was maybe Ludens or something. Go Shurelias though. Seriously, it packs so much speed, so much utility into this character. If you put a little bit of practice into Zilean, you're gonna skyrocket. Seriously, Zilean is sleeper OP. I'm telling you. Rel, I've also moved Rel up a tier this patch. I think that Rel, unfortunately, this is kind of just like a forgotten champion. I think Rel's kind of a failed experiment, to be honest, in terms of her gameplay. She's very clunky. She's awkward to play. I don't think she's super fun to play. That being said, there are very high caliber players like Core JJ who literally hit rank 1 on North America spamming Rel. He swears by Rel. I've watched him play Rel. He does dirty things to people when he's playing Rel. So I think Rel is quite sleeper as well. I'm not going to be playing Rel because I think she's just unfun to play. I only play Rel in competitive environments like tournaments and stuff like that. Solo queue Rel, it's a nightmare. Like, she just requires too much coordination. She's awkward. She's got a couple bugs with her E where sometimes the stun snaps and you didn't mean for it to be. It's just not a fun experience, but I do think she's quite good in getting slept on. Brand, actually going to move Brand down into tier 3 this patch. Brand is not super hot this season anymore. I think at the beginning of the season there were a couple really good builds for him. I think that they gave him a rework early in the season. Was that this season or last season? Anyways, he recently got a rework where like now his spells interact a little bit differently. He has much easier access to E, poke. His ult bounces off himself, and I think that paired with the Ludens buff, where he was getting multiple procs of Ludens because his spells all burn. I think he was really good for the first half of the season. I think he has way too many harsh counter picks, and like the meta is just not suited for him, and he's just not impressive enough in terms of like bringing raw damage to the bot lane to be picked over like the actual really good picks. So let's get into the actual good picks, guys. Nautilus, I think Nautilus has been slowly getting slept on this season too. He's basically like a team fight version of Leona. Leona excels at locking down one person in particular. Nautilus excels at locking down a little bit of everyone, right? He's much more. He wants to get into thick of things. He's got an unmissable ultimate, so really he's a little bit easier to pilot. Other than the fact that he can't engage through minions until level 6. Zyra, like I said, she's the one exception to the my opinion that poke supports are not very good this season. I do think Zyra is still kind of popping, and she got recently buffed, I think 2 patches ago. Karma, big buff this last patch. People are swearing by Karma. I almost put her into tier 3, but I have seen some Karmas do some really good stuff. I think she's kind of just like the better version of Rakan. Not necessarily like that they play similarly at all, because they don't. But she's really good at like patching up a team comp, right? If your team comp is already pretty decent and well-rounded, and you don't need like a hard engaged champion out of your support, Karma's a good like all-rounder to stick in there, and I think she's a little bit better than Rakan, and her Qs be smacking this patch, guys. Lulu has been dethroned from Tier 1 to Tier 2. They nerfed her twice, and the champion that she best pairs with, Kog'Maw, you're just really not seeing too much of him. So Lulu has been downgraded for the first time in many, many patches, but don't worry, there's a couple replacements up there in Tier 1 that I think you'll be happy about. Maokai, I seriously swear by this champion. I see so many players putting Maokai support and very, very low on their tier list. I am telling you, Maokai is so broken as support. I play him in tournaments. I play him in solo queue. You can look at my OPGG. This champion slaps. You just build full AP, you go Imperial Mandate, you go CDR Boots, you flash W onto the carry when they're 1 inch out of position, and you one-shot them. It's broken. One of the best things about playing Maokai support is that you have the easiest access to controlling objectives. So if you show up to the dragon 40 seconds before the dragon spawns and you have time to throw 3 saplings into a bush, they can't contest that dragon anymore. Like, having that ability to do that as a support is absolutely bonkers, man. But you do need your team to like kind of walk you in and like assist you in setting up for the objective. But seriously, like, you have insane objective control, really, really high damage. You're still going to run Aftershock so that you're tanky. So you're tanky, you have insanely high burst, you scale pretty well, and you've got great objective control. Soraka, I believe I moved Soraka down from Tier 1 to Tier 2. Not quite as impressive as the other enchanters up at the top in Tier 1, which we'll get to, but still very, very good. Now, when you play Soraka, you want to be looking out for champions like Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank is... I don't think Blitzcrank's kit is very good at all. I think that Blitzcrank is solely good because he presents a threat at literally all stages of the game. You can never relax around Blitzcrank. It doesn't matter if you have a 5,000 gold lead. If the game gets to 30 minutes, you can't walk up to an unwarded bush because Blitzcrank might be in there. He presents a threat, especially against these like squishy champions that dominate the meta. All it takes is one lucky Blitzcrank hook, and I think that Blitzcrank will always be good, at least like playable because of that. He may not have great itemization, he may not have great utility, he may not be the tankiest, but if you land a good Blitzcrank hook, even if it's a lucky Blitzcrank hook, you can win an entire game off that, and that's very, very high value as a support. Senna, Senna's at a weird spot, guys. I don't really know what direction they're going with Senna. She's bounced up and down the tier list, up and down. Sometimes she's picking bans, sometimes she's absolute trash. I think they have a really difficult time balancing this champion. But she's getting 2 new buffs on this patch that are going to be pushing her towards crit builds. Now, obviously, crit builds for Senna are a little bit more in the vein of, like, they want her to be played as an ADC. This is a support tier list. You can still build crit Senna. I would much rather see them balance it towards, like, lethality or even tank Senna again. Crit Senna just feels weird. You've got like high attack speed, high crit. It just feels strange. But that being said, Senna buffs, and I'd already thought that she was pretty freaking good, so we'll take them. She's getting a critical strike damage from 150% damage to 160%. So her crits hit harder than anyone's crits in the game, which is pretty wild. And then her soul drop rate for minions that she does kill is going from 4% to 10%. Now, that won't affect support Senna too much, but even if you're playing support, sometimes you're farming. You know, sometimes you're just like catching the wave under the turret or whatever, but that will give you a little bit of a boost in souls. Next is Yuumi. This champion is absolute cancer. I don't think anyone likes playing against Yuumi, but we're still in a wild... This is probably easily the most unbalanced season of all time. You know, we've got these items. Everyone's like spiking with 1 item power spikes. There's so many hyper carries in the game, and Yuumi she just provides so much value, and like she hops on 1 hyper carry. Doesn't matter if her mid and bot is losing. If her top's popping off, she hops on the top lane or the jungle, and then she just like enables that person to carry. Do you have a lot of agency with this champion? No, not really. You're basically like a walking 2 item power spike. But I do think she's quite good. She definitely makes me mental boom, so she's quite good. Thresh easily has the best support kit in the entire game, not in terms of balance, but just in terms of how much it brings. He can disengage, he can engage, he can get into the middle of their team, he can peel, he can reposition an ally with the Lantern. That's probably the most broken non-ultimate ability in the game is the Lantern. So Thresh, in terms, even though his numbers aren't super great right now, his kit is just absolutely unbeatable. So a good Thresh is absolutely terrifying, and gives very, very little counterplay. Alright guys, these are the best of the best. This is Tier 1. These champions are the best of the best in the current meta and should 100% be played if you want to climb, so let's talk very briefly about them, guys. Leona, I want you guys to know that she is getting a nerf this patch. So she was here, now she's here. I don't think this nerf is going to remove her from Tier 1. It's going to make her a little bit less tanky in the thick of things. So the exact nerf is her bonus armor and magic resist is getting 5 less when she pops W. Now that may not seem like a lot, but to a veteran Leona player, it kind of is. And I'm trying not to be biased here, but it kind of is a lot because you're popping W usually when you're in the middle of the team, the enemy team. So like the moment when you need to be tankiest, you're going to be a little less tanky. And it's 5 armor and 5 magic resist at all levels. So it's also harsh in the sense that like you max your W first and it starts affecting you at 1 rank of W. So at all ranks, like it's not like, you know, once you hit rank 3 or whatever, it goes away. But at all ranks, you have 5 less armor, 5 less magic resist for 6 seconds. Your W lasts 6 seconds if you hit someone with it. So that's 6 seconds of being pretty significantly less tanky. Like in team fights, having 5 less armor and 5 less magic resist, when you're getting hit from all directions, you're going to be taking quite a bit more damage. But it's not nearly enough to take her out of Tier 1. I still think she's going to be an incredibly good champion, especially because she hard counters the other 2 best champions in the patch. But let's get into the more interesting one this patch, guys. Nami. Nami has been pretty much a dead champion this season, in my opinion, alongside Sona. But Nami is going to be Tier 1 under one very specific circumstance. Nami Lucian is going to be the lane to play this patch, guys. The lane. Let me say that again for people in the back. Nami Lucian is the lane to play on patch 11.17. Nami is just getting straight up raw buffs. Let me see exactly what the buff was. Her base health is increased, which helps a lot. She got 15 base health, so you can take 1 more auto in lane. And then her W mana cost went down. She was also going to get W damage increase, but it doesn't look like that went through. But any mana cost buff to Nami is really good because her W mana cost costs more than ultimate at currently. But most importantly, so just straight up Nami buffs. But the reason Nami herself is going to be Tier 1 when paired with Lucian is because Lucian got reworked this patch. They're trying to move him back from mid lane back into the bot lane. So they're making it so that whenever he gets empowered by an ally, his next 2 passive shots, his next 2 autos are going to deal additional magic damage. And it's like 25 or 30 magic damage. So imagine this, guys. You're playing Nami Lucian. Nami puts E onto Lucian, which already grants him magic damage and slows on his auto. And Lucian gets that new buff, where if he's empowered by an ally, his autos are going to be doing like 120 at like level 2 or something. It's absolute lunacy. And Nami's going to be able to do that to him like quite frequently. We're not exactly sure what empowering an ally looks like. You know, does Font of Life proc that? Because if so, he's basically always going to get it. But we do know that from all the enchanters, Nami is going to be the easiest one to give him that, and it's going to be an absolutely terrifying lane. So definitely try it out if you have a duo partner, or if you see a solo QADC lock in Lucian, lock in Nami. Seriously, it's broken. I've played it. It's broken. Next is Sona. I can't believe this champion isn't being hot nerfed. This champion is so broken. She is literally sitting at like a 54-55% win rate in Grandmaster Plus, guys. Grandmaster Plus, Sona is performing that well. This is obviously post-rework Sona. Her numbers have been massively overtuned. She is now able to pump out way more basic ability haste just by playing Sona. You don't actually have to change your playstyle at all. You just get to use your abilities more, and then once you hit 120 basic ability haste, you can use your ultimate more. There's been team fights where I can literally ultimate twice on Sona just because I'm spamming my keys, man. It's absolutely broken. If you haven't seen the reworked Sona in action, check that out on my channel. I have a couple Sona videos because I've been spamming her. Definitely check that out. These are the top 3 guys. So Leona, despite her nerf, is still very, very good. Nami, specifically with Lucian, is good. Sona is cracked out of her mind. I don't know what Riot is thinking. She reaches her late game spike at like 10 minutes into the game. It's absolute lunacy. But this has been my tier list, guys. If you have any questions at all about anything I've said or anything that I have not spoken on, put them down in the comments, guys. And thank you so much for watching. hopefully this tier list helps you in your climb, and go out there and climb some solo queue, guys. Take it easy. Peace.